him off of that, off the rocks, John?
I think I pulled him off. Well, it's a little guy.
That's okay.
But it is a fish.
That's right. One little crankbait. Hey, we're here at Giving Pond in Upper Bucks County.
Yep.
It's an electric lake only for bass. Stay tuned. It's going to be a good one. All right.
Little, but we'll take him to get started.
Yeah. Spinner bug. It's a good fish, guy boy. Oh, feels good. Right off of that little point.
Yeah, this is for. Oh! Well, Bob, I told you, this is like the little spillway area of Giving Pond, and it's almost like a man-made point here. Where when they constructed it, this is like a spillway where if it floods and goes over, the water can get out of here and get out to the river. And there have been many, many times I've come along this point here just because there's good numbers of rocks. You know, we've looked around the rest of the lake and there's plenty of trees everywhere, but this is one of the few places where there's good amount of like a rock rubble. And so, you know, we caught the little one earlier, and you know, you missed another one before that, and that fish, you know, that looked like a decent fish.
Yeah.
And he was right up close to the shore.
Right. Yeah. Again, I'm throwing a spinnerbait here,
Right.
and I'm just bringing it out because we do have that drop off stuff
Right.
like that. So I'm hitting the bottom and then just bringing it out like that.
And you're not just bringing it straight out.
No.
You're stopping it,
letting it fall.
fall.
Well, once I tap on something,
Exactly.
like you said, there's rubble in here all over, and some logs too. I'm
Exactly.
Sure. But yeah, well, another one that got away.
Another one that got away. I'm pretty sure I'm 1 for 1.
Yeah. John, this is a really great place. Not only to fish, but you can kayak and bank fish and stuff like that. Just tell a little bit about Giving Pond.
Well, Bob, it's pretty brand new. I mean, when we talk about some of the places we fish, you know, Nakamix and Towhee, place has been around for forever.
Yeah.
You know, this place hasn't been. This was an old sand and gravel quarry up until 2002. And in 2002, the land got given over to the state, and it's now part of the Delaware Canal State Park system. And they allowed it to fill in over, you know, a course of, you know, a couple of years, and stocked it with fish. So some of the great unique things, I mean, as you can see, is all this standing timber, which, you know, you and I have to go to South Carolina,
Right,
you know, to
right.
find standing timber. We just about never see it anyplace else. And so people from Pennsylvania may not have any idea how to fish it. So it's a little weird to get used to. There's really no weeds in it.
Yeah, which is an odd thing too.
Yeah,
you
a
know?
little weird, yeah, and you know, but I guess just because of the depth.
Yeah.
On most of these places, just a little bit out from the bank is 10 or 12 foot deep. And most of the places where we fish where there are weeds, the weeds can't grow deeper than
Right.
8 or 10 or 12 foot deep. So you're really looking at just fishing this standing cover.
Right, and like I said, it's I mean, you're throwing a little spinnerbait. I'm throwing a bigger spinnerbait. Little crankbaits work good in here, and
Yeah, I mean, I like to throw little crankbaits whenever I can, just because most people won't. It's intimidating to throw a treble hook, you know.
and all this stuff.
Yeah, even top waters, you know, a buzzbait is great to throw, but I like to throw something again that has some treble hooks to it, just because most people won't take the time to throw something like that.
And again, the other baits that we'd want to throw, you could throw a tube.
Sure, you could throw a tube bait. I mean, any type of plastic that would be, you know, weedless. You know, we're fishing around all these islands, which is another thing that really makes this, you know, so unique. And I mean, even out in the middle, there's this standing timber out in 10, 12 foot of water.
Right.
It's almost, we mentioned it earlier, you almost go into overload. You don't know exactly where to throw.
Right.
And so we're just trying to, you know, cover some ground. We really haven't fished here a whole lot this year. We're just trying to move around and see if we can get a few bites, see if we can try to put a pattern together where we think the fish are or what, you know, they seem to want to bite on. So it's a decent size. I think it's like 90 acres.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's big.
Which is about twice the size of Lake Towhee. but it fishes 90 acres
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
all the water that we see here is fishable. You can get to it all, where Lake Towa you can't get to all of
Right,
it.
because it's all weeded in.
So we're having to really make sure that we let our baits flutter down deep, because most of the places we're throwing to are at least 10 or 12 foot deep.
Yeah, and that's the oddity. You think it's real shallow there, but
Right.
2 feet off there, it just drops down
Yeah.
because obviously when they quarried this, it
Yeah.
was just a wall.
Yeah, they didn't dig 10 foot deep. They
yeah,
dug.
yeah.
There are spots where I think it's 80 foot deep.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we fish for them 80 foot deep, but there's a significant amount of depth here.
One of the things too, that it's electric only.
Yep.
A lot of kayakers, canoes.
Yeah.
Even though
very,
we have a
very
little bass
popular.
buggy over there.
We kind of have to work a little hard to put this rig in.
Yeah.
I had to get my feet wet and kind of walk it off, and getting it back on the trailer will be really interesting.
Yeah, it's a little hard to. So you
But-
should be aware of that when you come out here.
Yeah, you're not going to bring a bass boat.
No, it's not. It's just not.
A big
Yeah, it's just
fiberglass.
Yeah, it's just too hard. And the ramp is kind of unique. You got to back down like a quarter of a mile.
Almost, yeah, at least 100 yards. If you
It's
can't
really-
back up, there's no place to turn around.
Right.
So from the parking area down to the ramp, you really gotta.
Yeah, that's a little unique part. But it's good though. A lot of people come here just with their kayaks. They can flip it right off
Yeah.
and canoes and stuff.
There's a lot of bird watching that happens
Yeah.
here. A lot of people are out here with binoculars and spotting the different types of birds.
And also, I mean, we're obviously we're fishing,
Right.
but they have a lot of trails that you can bike and walk on. Too, right?
Trails. There's some picnic tables around, and you're allowed to archery hunt. I've never seen anybody do that here before, but there are some trees around, and I imagine there's some deer around. But they do let you bow hunt here. No guns allowed, so no duck hunting or anything like that. But it's a nice little area here, and I mean, it was here a lot of years. Oh, I got one. Oh, midget guy.
Oh, you got a small bait. You got a small
Small bait makes small fish.
All right. Speaking of the fish, what fish do we have in here, John?
Well, this is a largemouth bass. You can't tell it by the size, but it is a largemouth bass. And I think that's what most of the guys are going for. We've seen some people fishing with minis and stuff. They're fishing for crappies or for yellow perch. But largemouth bass is probably your number one. There are some smallmouth bass because the floods back in '06, I think, with the Delaware River, we're only, as the crow flies, 100 yards from Delaware River.
Right.
It has flooded into here, and I caught a smallmouth out of here last year. There's some pickerel, but largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, pickerel, and panfish.
So you got a total fishery. You got
Yeah.
you got catfish and
Yeah, there are channel cats
Yeah.
in here as well.
so I mean, come out here and just catch a variety of fish. And on the other side there's a little pond where you can take your kids and they can bank fish there and catch a lot of little sunnies and
Yeah, the bank's a little grown up now because it's kind of getting towards the end of the summer, but there is pretty good amount of bank fishing. And like I said, picnic tables, and it's a nice place to bring a family.
Yeah.
Quiet and out of the way, and very picturesque here. But if you've got a canoe or a kayak or an old rooftop John boat or something, we always used to talk about Lake Towa was the place to go.
Right.
This is just an outstanding place to bring a
and
little
it's
boat
not
like that.
far from Doylestown, New Hope. Frenchtown's right across the river from us
Yeah, the
here.
Frenchtown Bridge. We're just maybe half a mile north of the Frenchtown Bridge.
Now the only thing that we do laugh about is that the signage here
If you sneeze or blink, you're going to
you've
miss
passed it. So be careful when you come up River Road. It'll be on your left-hand side, going north. And it's a hard sign to see, but once you know where it's at.
The sign says Delaware Canal State Park,
Right.
and in real little print, Giving Pond Recreation Area.
Yeah.
But there is a sign there. You just take your time, look for it, and you'll find it.
We're gonna have a good time up here, so come on up.
Oh, Bobby, I think he's hung up. No, he come out.
There you go. That's a chunky little one.
We're slowly moving up in the world
Yeah.
from what we caught this morning.
Yeah.
But just like we talked about, just trying to fish real slow in the shade here and just kind of pitch right up into these
And
trees.
you gotta pick it all apart because
Right.
now that fish was, where was that fish, John?
That fish, that tall tree there, I threw right in next to that tree, let it sink. And when we talked about just like watching the line, let it sink on a slack line, watching the line. And as soon as I picked it up, it's like he grabbed it. He was looking at it. He didn't hit it on the first fall like sometimes they do. But as soon as I picked it up, the line went right down and he had it. So I don't know, what is it, 12 inches or so?
It's all right. Hey,
but we keep moving up. You know, hopefully we'll have a 2 or 3 pounder by the end of the
It's
day.
just fun to catch them like
Oh, yeah.
that, though. I mean, it's just
We've been able to find some shade here, even though
Yeah.
it's bright and sunny, but we're definitely having a good time.
He was aiming to.
Well, we're consistent. we keep being consistent. Again, I threw a little crankbait right up next to a log, and saw a swirl, a fish come out and run at it, but he didn't hit it. So, like I've told you before, I just love to keep the Senko handy, so that if ever I miss a strike, or if I know a fish is sitting there, I can just pitch that in. And granted, he's nothing real impressive to look at.
But he could have been.
He could have been 2
Yeah.
or 3 pounds,
Yeah.
but you know, certainly better than catching nothing. Been many
Yeah.
days you and I have fished where we'd have been happy to catch one like that.
That's right.
So
That's another good technique.
another good
Keep that-
technique. Well, that's having a second rod rigged with a follow-up bait.
Right.
And you know, some people may not have tons of rods, but just have one extra
Yeah,
rod
yeah.
ready for a follow-up.
You
With,
could put a
with
little
bait
worm
like
on
that.
there too. I mean, there's just
Oh,
something.
sure.
Yeah.
A little slider worm
Yeah.
or something like that. Anything that can just throw there, go right to that spot, because that fish, that fish is at least interested in eating.
Right.
But for some reason he stopped and he didn't like what he saw. But if you can throw at him like a position bait, a jig, a worm, like these Senkos, sometimes that fish is fired up enough where he'll
If
go.
something flops back in
Right.
there, so I missed it on the first one, but here it is.
And he will go back and hit it.
Little crappie. Oh, spinnerbait. A lot of people come here for these.
Sure.
They're a lot of fun to catch with a
Oh yeah, that's.
bobber and minnow and stuff
I'm
like
sure
that.
a lot of guys around here are fishing with minnows are trying to catch. And I think there's a good population because I've caught them on crankbaits, and stuff fishing for bass. I have caught them here, so I think there's got to
My
be good
spinnerbait
numbers
was as
of
big as that.
them. Yeah, well, that's an aggressive fish for sure. But they're good eating. If you're looking for an eating fish, as far as taking a few home with you and filleting them up. I'm pretty sure there's no size limit on crappies.
No.
You can keep anything you want. Another crappie.
Well, actually, we're doing a crappie show
Yeah,
today.
we really ought to think about that. Just doing the crappie show instead.
Look how pretty they are.
Yeah, he ate that thing, boy.
Yeah.
I mean, he sucked that thing in. So, big mouth on them. A lot of people call these guys paper mouths just because they're real thin lips. Try to be careful with them.
Yeah, but there's trebles. One of the things that you had mentioned before, is that there's so much weeds, or so much wood here,
Right.
that throwing a treble hook, or any bait with a treble hook, is really quite difficult. So a lot of times, unless you
Ooh, you got me.
want to, wait, do that. But
Right.
as far as going out, you should, like a spinnerbait's fairly weedless or woodless,
Yeah.
as the case may be.
Well, now you might know this better than I do. Do we have white crappie or do we have black crappie?
That's a white crappie.
Is that right?
So,
I'm not even sure.
I know it's like black crappie, or like in
More southern?
yeah.
Okay. We really should have made this a crappie show, Bob. How many crappies have we caught now?
We've got a bunch of them.
Well, that's good press for them that they've got a good panfish lake here as well. Have you broke the crappie curse?
I think so. I finally got a fish in the boat. Now, again, let's just talk a little bit about the time element, John. These fish seem to be becoming active
Yeah.
now when the low light comes and they're moving.
Right. We got here at like 5 o'clock tonight just because there was no reason. These fish don't really bite
Right.
until it's really just starting to get late. About the last hour of daylight is really when you're going to get your best bite this time of year. So a lot of guys, it's great. You
And
come
again,
out here after
it's
work.
right off of this little point here.
Right.
we're
I think
working.
the last 2 fish were
Right.
6 feet apart from each other.
Right.
And we just think that just the fish have just begun to start to get a little more active and start to begin to think more about feeding.
Like I said, they could be suspended out here because it's deep.
Yep.
Now they're going to start working their way back into the bushes again. There you go, good fish.
Now, Bob, I had that fish come up and strike at a topwater bait. You see I got this other rod between my legs.
Right.
And he came up and he hit it, but he didn't get it. So I took this Senko and threw it right back in there. Now earlier tonight, tried that with one of your fish, but didn't work because you had.
I stuck them pretty
Yeah,
good.
you hit them, but if they haven't gotten the hooks in them, I'm all discombobulated. Often you can do that. You can just throw right back in there,
And
just let it sink to the spot.
That's a good thing because you wanted to hook up like that. So
Right.
in case something happens like that, you immediately go to that other rod.
Right.
And a lot of times you will catch that fish because he's been excited. Or another fish
Right.
that saw him go after
Exactly.
it, they'll come after it too.
The important part is that this rod is sitting on the deck, ready to go. Ready to throw out on a moment's notice. Now, of course, I'm all tangled here, but I mean, that's a price I'm willing to pay to catch a
Yeah,
fish.
right.
So,
And you never know what size it's going to be
yep.
because that could have enticed a much bigger fish that's
Sure,
aggressive.
if there's a couple of fish.
Yeah.
So, no, I just
Now,
gotta
how
deal
far
with
did
the
he? Was
tangle.
he off
He was
the back?
actually, he was just on the outside of these bushes.
Uh-huh. There you go, John.
Just came up and hit that little buzz bait. Just starting to get a little bit later. Finally got the sun down. Started throwing the buzz bait.
And this is kind of a it's kind of a unique spot on the lake. It's like what would you say, the north?
I guess
end?
like the northern end here. It's
Yeah.
almost like a little pond.
like
stuck
a
on
pond within the
top.
lake itself.
Yeah, right.
And it's filled with, I mean, so many trees in the back there. Unless you have a kayak or something, you can't
Right.
really get back in here. But from what all this is, it's probably a great spawning area.
Yeah,
in the
we would
springtime,
think
'cause it
so.
would warm up, got a lot of cover like that stuff.
I would think so. It's again, you almost get on overload of what you're going to throw at
Yeah.
here. But you could probably, in end of March, April, and May, this is probably a great spot to try.
Because even the fish that are out there may come in here.
Right.
But I'm sure that with the depth, we still got 9 feet of water right
There's
here.
enough cover in here. There's some fish are
Yeah.
living in here,
Yeah.
but we would
Yeah.
think that most of the fish are out. But we're just trying to get around, just cover some ground here.
Yeah.
And so it worked out pretty well. I'll catch them on top of water
Yeah.
all night long if they'll
Yeah.
bite.
Yeah. Just throwing a spinner bait in here. And I got a top water bait in here especially, or a weedless worm or something, because
Right.
it's going to be a little difficult.
Yeah.
But there's so much cover in this
Yeah,
part.
I've been throwing the crankbait, but there's another one. Look at that! Oh man, son of a gun! That was like that close to the boat, man. That was a half decent fish
I
too.
threw in there, I think, already
Yeah.
with the spinner bait.
That was a half decent fish too.
And now for a closer look at today's tackle, Delaware Valley Outdoors presents the Tackle Box. For more information about the tackle used on today's show, go to DelawareValleyOutdoors.com.
Well, John, we're here with the tackle box, and this is a kind of unique lake. It's electric only and all
Right.
that, but it's got a lot of structure, trees, bushes,
standing cover.
Yeah, a lot of standing cover. And one of the things that I like to use when we're doing this, it's what they call a shaky head jig.
Right.
Okay, and that is, it's a football jig.
Right.
And then you just Texas rig any worm you'd like on it, but what it does, it really stands up like this and allows that bait to move like that. And it's weedless because we're in trees here for...
Now, a lot of people might say, well, why don't you use a Texas rig? Why would you use that instead of a Texas rig?
Well, you can Texas rig this.
Yeah, but I mean, as opposed to like the sliding sinker.
Well, it makes the head stand up and it wiggles like this
That's
when
the
it's on the
idea.
bottom, so
Right.
it goes like that. I used these a lot down in Kentucky Lake when I was down there, and it's very popular down there. I was very successful with it. And again, this kind of structure that we have here, because we have gravel here too,
Right.
it's very, very good in the gravel. Now, I'm going to have to say this, you know that.
Always going to fish a spinner.
Always
bait.
going to fish a spinner bait because it's weedless through here.
Right.
I can pitch it around the trees and I can throw it out. And again, here, white chartreuse.
3/8 of an ounce.
Yeah, 3/8 ounce. And again, the Colorado blade with the willow leaf,
Right.
I find just nice, the combination.
Sometimes the water color was really going to determine your blade choice or the skirt choice.
Right.
A little bit of a murkier water, more of an Indiana blade or a Colorado blade, but a clearer water, we like to stick with the willow leaf.
Yeah, I just, I like this kind. Now, I'm gonna have to say, I actually turned you on to this later. You fought me, and
You
you
did.
fought me, and you fought me with
For
it.
years and years and years.
But talk about this, what you're doing with the Senkos now.
This is a 4.5-inch Senko that you used to always just take a worm hook and just hook it right in the
Wacky
middle of the
style, right in
worm,
the middle.
wacky style. And I mean, that was great. And I started doing that and started catching some fish doing it. The problem was every time you set the hook, you'd rip the worm, and then you'd have to put another one on, and these things really aren't that cheap.
Right, Gary Yamamoto likes that idea.
So, well, that's the thing. Yeah, we're making him lots of money.
Yeah.
So, I read in Bassmaster magazine about taking a very small O-ring, and I've got a guy down at Cooper Plumbing in Ottsville who hooks me up, sells me these things, pretty good numbers for cheap. And this O-ring just barely fits over and around this Senko, and it's a really tight fit. Once you get it on here, you work it all the way down to where it's in the middle, and of course this one's fighting me.
And I know you do this ahead of time a lot of
Right,
times.
yeah, I've usually got 4 or 5 of them rigged up
Right.
together.
It's easier because this way, if you do happen to lose it or get
Absolutely.
stuck, you can just pop
Now,
it right
once
back.
you've got that O-ring on there and it is really tight, you can take a weedless hook. This is like a number 1/0 size weedless hook. You can get these at Walmart really cheap. Unhook it, and you're not hooking the worm, you're actually hooking through the O-ring. And once you've got that thing hooked through the O-ring, I've had it where you can catch 10, 15, or even 20 fish on one worm, on
Which
one
makes it
hookup.
much more economical.
Much more economical. I mean, you can buy these things in bulk. There, we always use the word Senko, but a lot of manufacturers make them. Zoom makes them. The place, the Wacky Worm up in the Poconos, makes them and sells them in bulk. But I found that I can catch 10, 15, 20 fish or more on one worm, and these things just never wear out. The weedless hook really allows you to throw it into bushes, into sticks, into weeds. You used to just use the worm hook, which you had to be a little bit careful about where you threw that. But I mean, I'll throw this anywhere. I won't hesitate throwing that in any spot at all. And I've caught
And your hookups are
tons
just
on
about
it.
the same, right?
Just, I think even more so, because if I'm more likely to throw it into a spot that maybe you or someone else isn't, I think I'm more likely to catch a fish that isn't.
Okay, now you're fishing this on a spinning rod.
Almost always on a spinner
And
rod.
what pound test you're going to use on that?
I like to use 8. We've had this talk before. I should probably be using 10, but it's easier to fish it with 8 as far as casting it, because this is a fairly light rig with no other weight on it, casting it just weightless and just allowing it to sink. So, but yeah, 8-pound test on a 6.5 foot medium action spinning rod, and you should be in good shape.
Just talk a little bit, and we're laboring the point a little bit, but what's the bite going to feel like with this?
It's a great question.
You're letting it fall through the water column, which is the great part about that.
It is a great question. I've had some people that I've taken out fishing before, and I'm caught 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and they haven't caught any. And then I'll start looking at them to watch and say, well, what are they doing wrong? And I find that what they're doing is they're throwing it out and twitching it back, twitching it back, twitching it back. Whereas I think the beauty of this thing is when it first hits the water, to let it fall, almost on a slack line. And what I'll try to do, if at all possible, is watch the line. And you can just see the line will just begin to just go out, and then it'll either twitch or the line will just start to swim sideways. And as soon as you hear that, just reel up a couple and set the hook to it. You don't have to really put like a killer worm hook set to it, because the hook is exposed.
Right.
Almost just a little snap of the wrist and you've got them, because
Right.
they will suck this thing in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. You let that fall, and then as it falls down, especially on a piece of structure, you want to get it close to that structure and come down. But then you can twitch it a little bit and just
Twitch it, let it fall right back down again. If you're throwing at like a spot, like a point of weeds or a stick or something, I'll throw it, let it sink. Once I'm sure it's on the bottom, I'll maybe twitch it once, maybe twice, but then I'll reel it right in and throw it back to the next spot again. We're pretty confident that in a lake like this where there's so much cover, the fish are next to the cover. The fish are next to the bush or next to the tree or next to the stump. That's where they're at. They're not just swimming out in La La Land in the middle. We're going to throw right where they're at, and they're either going to hit it or they're not. And if they're not, then we want to move on to the next spot and
there's
keep going.
plenty of spots to hit.
Plenty of
Okay,
spots.
now you have 2 small crankbaits here. What's that?
Yeah, now a lot of people think I'm crazy for throwing crankbaits in a lake like this with tons of standing timber, but I've told this to you for years and years. The reason I do it is because most everybody doesn't do it. Most everybody is throwing the spinner baits around here. It's easy to come out here, let me throw a spinner bait, but how many times have these fish seen a crankbait?
Right.
Probably not too often. Now, you got to be careful. You got to use your head and know what a bite feels like.
Versus
you know,
Uncle Wood.
right, versus, okay, I just hit a branch, you know, so just let it go, and you'll find that these things will just kind of float up off of that. But if you set the hook into it, well, then you've driven it into it, and you've got to go and get it. Right. You're going to hang it up sometimes. There's nothing you can do about it. If you're not hanging it up sometimes, you're not throwing it where you need to be throwing it.
And these sizes here, you like these small ones
right
right
these
here.
are little, these are Strike King Mini 3 series, you know, about maybe 2 inches long. I think they're like about 1/4 of an ounce. They dive to about 6 feet, give or take, on 8-pound test. I'm sure you could use some bigger ones, but again, I'm looking for smaller ones that I can throw on a spinning rod that I can control really well.
All right, now we're going to go to your favorite versus my favorite.
Well, if the spinnerbait is your vice, the buzzbait is my vice. This is, again, a little Strike King Mini buzzbait. I think it's 1/8 of an ounce. Again, perfect for spinning rods. I like to throw smaller baits to try to get more bites. If I was only after the biggest fish out here, sure, we'd be throwing bait casters, be throwing big we'd hardly get any bites, but the bites we got would be big.
Right.
I want to get as many bites as we can. This is a bait where if they're aggressive, they can usually come and get it pretty good. But sometimes you can just annoy a fish into biting it. Sometimes they will bite this one, they will bite nothing else.
Right. Especially when at that darker period,
right,
especially with the low light we have like
exactly.
that.
First thing in the morning, last thing in the evening. You can sometimes catch it when there's some good cloud cover and some fish are active, but it is just such a fun bait to fish.
Yeah.
And the other topwater bait that I've had a lot of luck with here at this lake is a pop R type bait. This is a skitter pop, actually from Rapala. Again, pretty small size, only a couple inches long. But when these fish are so tight to specific pieces of cover, whereas a buzzbait is really kind of covering ground, running around, maybe designed more for like weed bed fishing. This is a great spot bait to where, okay, I want to throw it right up next to that log and let it sit there. And then just let me twitch it, let it sit. Twitch it, let it sit. You can't do that with a buzzbait,
Right.
you know, but this is a lure that you can annoy a fish into biting it, and they can eventually come up and suck it down.
And again, we're shooting it for that in the low light conditions.
Low
too.
light conditions, yeah. It's very, very rare that you'll get a fish to bite this in the middle of the day. It's happened before,
sure.
but cloud cover, early morning, late in the evening are usually going to be your best times.
And that's the tackle box.
Well, we haven't quite found the big ones yet, Bob, but the sun's starting to get down a little bit. Finally, I went back to a top water bait. And got that guy. Boy, he ate it. I don't know where the heck to grab him. And he's so warm.
Well, the water temperature we got was what, 85 degrees?
85 degrees, yeah. What,
We're,
like
we're talking
first week of August.
first
right?
week of August. It's probably not the prime time
Right, for catching bass.
for catching bass right now because the water situation. More of a nighttime bite or really
Right.
early in the morning, something like that. But anyway, come up to Giving Pond. John, thanks for coming out with us here.
As always, my pleasure. Sorry we couldn't put any big ones in there,
Yeah,
but
well,
you know, we've still got a few more minutes. We'll keep trying.
Anyway, go to our website, Delaware Valley Outdoors. Get all our podcasts and our webcast. It's great. Hey, I'm Bob Murray, John Hawthorne. I'll see you on the water.
Decent fish too, right? That's like 12, 14 inches. Oh,
I was on
a spook. I lost one too.
the buzz bait.
Buzz. Oh,
I was on the buzz.
man, what is it with us tonight, Bob? Dang, that line was screaming sideways like this, Bob. Oh, I can't believe I didn't know
You had a
that.
hook without a thing on there. You probably would have caught it.
We really should have made this a crappie show, Bob.